Hi, everyone. I'm Mamta Rodriguez. I'm Global Head of Banking, Financial Services, and Insurance here at Teleperformance. I'm also co chair of TP Women and very active in our diversity efforts. I have the privilege of being part of the podcast series for Women's History Month. And today, the topic is equity versus equality. More often than not, people tend to think equity and equality are one and the same, and they're not. In reality, while equity means each individual or group receives the same resources or opportunities. Equity recognizes that each person has various circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. Well, enough about that definition because we're going to double click on it with the amazing ladies that I have here with me, Stephanie, Audrey, and Ruchi. And with that, I'd love for you to introduce yourselves. Stephanie, you want to begin?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, Mamta, and thank you, TP, for allowing me to be here and share a little bit of my background, my history, and what we're doing at MasterCard. As you said, Stephanie Bello, I've been with MasterCard around 14 years. I keep telling one that time flies because I can't believe it's been 14 years. Currently, I lead digital partnerships, strategic alliances, retail, and commerce for Latin America. And as I've mentioned to some of you already, to me, gender equality, equity, it's close to my heart as a woman, seeing what my grandmother, my mother, and those women's around me have gone through. So it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm committed and determined to make a difference in this world.
Thank you for being with us and spending the time. I'm really looking forward to it, Stephanie. Ruchi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. Thank you, Mamta and Stephanie. I'm Ruchi Gupta, have been with Teleperformance for almost about 2 years now. I'm the Senior Vice President for Client Solutions and Business Development for our India geography and reside in Chicago. I'm a mother of two crazy and sassy kids in the industry for almost about 20 years. Since the start of my career, just like Stephanie, I've been a big advocate for women leaders and optically showing that as well. I've been a part of many forums across the four organizations I've worked with, and it's not just about gender diversity. I've been part of ethnicity, socioeconomic backgrounds, and all diverse groups, basically. I'm part of the TP Women Board and chair the Asian at TP ERG as well. Lovely being here.
Excellent. Thank you for being with us, Ruchi. And last but not least, Audrey.
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is Audrey Thomas. I am the Senior Manager of Internal Communications for Teleperformance USA. I also co chair the US chapter of TP Women and sit on the board for Asian at TP, our Veterans Group, and soon to come, our TP Men. I've been with Teleperformance for I just hit my 5 years not too long ago. And I would say over the past 2 to 3 years, when TP Women first got started, I really dove in and got involved with it. And then as our DE&I efforts have grown, I've really jumped in everywhere that I could. So I'm pretty heavily involved in our efforts there as well.
Yeah, well, it's such a privilege having all of you here with us today. I want to pause for a minute because when I listen to your intros, what amazes me is each and every one of you has come from many different walks of, in different paths, but have a lot in common to what you described, and there are different parts of your career. Most underlying all of it was your passion that came across, passion for the conversation that we're having today, passion also for your roles that you have in your organizations, and also passion personally for your loved ones that you have. So I really want to just pause and say, good for you to have that passion, because that's really what I want to celebrate as well today. So kicking off, I want to first start with how do you each and every, and this is open to either one, any of you answering it, is how do each and every one of you describe that definition of equity and or equality? And anybody can jump in on that one.
So I can start on that one because I've been actually thinking about this a lot since we chose this topic for this podcast. And to me, you can really break down the difference of equity and equality just by even looking truly at the sheer definition of the word. So, what I mean by that is, we talk about equality a lot, which is giving everyone the same thing. And to me, that almost goes back to like a very old Sesame Street style of, you get one, I get one, you get one, I get one. And everything that we get is the same because that's equality. The definition of equality doesn't address fairness, though. I think it's presumed. But that's when you really break down how each person individually can be most successful and give them something that isn't necessarily equal, but it gives them the path to an equal outcome. One thing that I've actually, heard a lot, an analogy that I like that I think puts it in perspective is equality is giving everyone a pair of shoes, and equity is giving everyone a pair of shoes that fit.
Mhm.
I love
I
that.
love that. I love that. Sorry,
So
go ahead,
true.
Stephanie.
Yep, and I was going to say that I align very much with what you just said. So to me, when you think of equality, is how do you set that foundation that everyone has the opportunity but being fair? So when you think about equal pay, right? We all as women work as hard as any of our male counterparts. So it shouldn't be a question. It shouldn't be even a consideration that women should get pay less than men, or why are they getting paid less than men? It should be equal because we're doing the same job, so that's fair. And to me, when I think of equity, is ensuring that all of our systems allowed everyone to participate and flourish regardless of their background. So to me, that's also being fair and impartial to people's background and conditions. So I think there's a huge difference there. However, people tend to um, how can I say this? Digress when arguing one or the other. But the reality is that as a gender initiative, we should consider both.
Agreed. I think Ruchi wants to say something, and then I have a comment. Go for it, Ruchi.
Thanks so much. And, I couldn't resonate with Audrey and Stephanie more. I'll kind of put it in a very simple and short manner, right, in my mind. So, when you look at equality, it is basically like Audrey mentioned, it's having the same openings. So, having the same door and window open for all of us. And equity, on the other hand, is when you get inside the door or the window, having the same playing field with the same rules, the same fair aspects. And that's so hard to actually come by if all of you really think about it, because I know Audrey and I are going to speak on another podcast as well about invisible women, but it kind of takes you through that entire journey that, it's not as fair a playing field as we would like it to be, right?
Mhm.
So I'll just give you an example which hits me right away on an everyday basis, and this is nothing to do with gender diversity, especially in the US. I'm going to pivot to economic or financial differences. So in healthcare, someone who has lower income or health status, you need to provide that extra boost to overcome those barriers that they face. Because let's face it, it's as expensive like crazy, right? So that's what I think equity and equality differ in that manner, that once you open the door, have the playing field the same across board for everybody, regardless of where they come from.
Mhm.
I agree. And I think, to your points, the journey of diversity started with equality. And now as we've double clicked on it, it is at equity. And the other part of that statement is it starts early. I look at, I have teenage kids, but I look sometimes at where some of that bifurcation starts,
Mhm.
even in gender. It starts early. And as a society, we need to double click on the equity piece earlier on, because otherwise, what happens, it becomes, using the pay scale example, but more loosely, that scale and that gap becomes larger and larger as life goes ahead, right? You're
Mhm.
falling behind to some extent. And that's why that equity conversation early on, even in the educational years, is such an important one to have.
Yep.
Um,
A perfect example of that, if I may jump in, Mamta, is when
mhm.
you look at young girls in STEM. And that's
Yes.
a topic that is very close to my heart. I'm actually part of the board of an organization called Code Art. And what
Mhm,
we do is try to educate young girls about this topic. Because what happens is when you talk to young girls about, if you imagine an astronaut, if you imagine an engineer, a math professor, who do you imagine? Usually the answer will be a male figure. So for some reason, one, they do not see themselves represented there. Two, something happens along the way that girls get disencouraged and they don't want to be
mhm,
part of the system. And three, are we empowering those girls? Are we nurturing those girls? Are we enabling those girls to have the necessary tools in order to be part of STEM? And the answer
mhm.
may be yes or no, but it shouldn't be like that. We should give them the necessary tools so they can be part of the world. So I couldn't concur more with what you just said.
I love it. And agreed. It's like the question is not why, it's why not, right?
Hmm.
exactly. So, pivoting to another question that I had, and maybe Stephanie, I could start with you. So, and it's a good segue. What is diversity for you, and how do you see that anchored in diversity of thought? And then a second part of it, so I might as well ask both, and you can choose what you do first, is in addition, how can companies create more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces? And any examples that you can share in the midst of that would be awesome as well.
There's so much that I can talk about. We can spend the next 30 minutes talking about that. But to me, an inclusive workplace is one that champions positive social impact inside and outside of the walls of our organization. And to me, it is not something, it is not a nice to have as a company. It is a necessity. It is a must that everyone should embrace from the top of the organization all the way to the bottom of the organization. So, diversity, equity, and inclusion, if done right, it can help organization fully harness the potential of their employees and that the company has. So at Mastercard, that is something very close to the core of our business. We have zero tolerance for people that does not respect diversity, and we have a lot of programs to embrace it. So if I focus on women specifically, one of the things that we're doing is the 30% club. So we have women that are being trained because we believe that a lot of women have to be part of that 30% club of boards. So what are the right tools that we should be given to those that are director, vice president, senior vice president, so they can make it to the top? We have another program related to what I was saying earlier about young girls called Girls for Tech, where we do it ourselves and with our partners, and we train young girls on the different topics on STEM. And we do different activities with them so they can see themselves doing it, but they can see their representation from our organization and our partners actually being able to do this. That we've already achieved 33% of women in senior management. This is not the number where I will love to see. I know we still have a lot more work to do there, but those are just some examples. On the inclusion part, I think one topic that is also very passionate to me is we launch a card that is a touchless card, that the touch card, sorry, where people that are visually impaired can actually touch it. And with the feeling of their touching the card, they can know if it's a debit, credit, or prepaid. Otherwise, they wouldn't know. They will only be able to touch their name. So to me, that's giving them the power of actually being able to use the card that they want at the point of sale. Another product that we launch is the true name card. So a lot of people that are transgender are not able to use their true name today. So now with this new initiative and through our issuers, consumers that consider themselves as transgender or that they believe that their name is not the right name as their birth gender, they can actually do this. So to me is how can we do initiatives not only internally for our employees, but also externally for our customers?
I absolutely love that. And I love how you're harnessing the power of MasterCard to support diversity and also empower people in the process, right? Where they feel, I mean, that's true equity in what you just
Mhm.
described, and being able to be empowered to be self-sufficient and also to know that MasterCard has their back, on that front. I absolutely
Exactly.
love it. Absolutely love it. Audrey, as Stephanie so well, described all the things that Mastercard's doing and many companies are doing. What do you see as some common challenges that companies still face? I know you're involved in a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts generally, but as you look at the workplace, can you highlight a few that we still need to overcome?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, actually. And I think just like she said with, the previous question, we could probably sit here for hours and talk about challenges that come up with this because it's not new, but it's still fairly new within companies, especially of our size. So for today's discussion, we'll just talk about, a top few that I've seen, especially over the last year and a half or so. Um, I think one key challenge is that lack of knowledge. It's not even just meaning what is DE&I, but do people truly understand it? Once you know the definition, do they truly understand it in its entirety and not just super high level? I think another is perception. And what I mean by that specifically is one, it's really thinking through how we say things, especially when we're talking about diversity, inclusiveness. We, talk through how we say it. But there's another side to that is how people hear it. And I think that's something that Teleperformance has done. We're really working towards tackling. I'll give you an example of that. We did for Black History Month, we did our cookbook. And we asked all of our employees to submit recipes that we could turn into a cookbook to purchase and give those funds to Minnie's Food Pantry. And the way that it was marketed was, it read to submit your recipes to support the Black culture and the Black community because we were going to give back in that community. And we received a couple of reports of that other employees didn't think that they could participate. They thought it was only an initiative for our Black employees. So we realized that on our end, we definitely probably could have worded that a little bit better, but we also have to work to help people understand how they hear it.
It's a good point.
Um,
Perception
and the last
becomes
one,
reality. Sorry, go ahead.
oh
Yeah,
no,
go
you're
ahead,
fine.
Audrey.
And I think the last one is probably access that I would talk about because I think we're really fortunate at Teleperformance. There's a lot of organizations, I think one of the obstacles they have to overcome is participation. And I don't think we have that. We have the want. People want DE&I. They show up, they engage, they participate, but it's how do we get it all the way to the front line because we're a huge, huge company. Um, and I think we could, spend just as much time talking about how we overcome those obstacles. But I think the one that is most important and the one that I usually talk about is just education. It's, communication to the masses. It's educating people about DE&I. It's awareness and really just working to get people on board and continue learning.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Audrey. And so well said from, Stephanie's conversation as well on that front. So Ruchi, you've heard from Stephanie and what MasterCard is doing and more of, Stephanie's perception of where diversity and reality of where diversity needs to be and is, and especially where equity needs to be and is going, I'd say, from an equality perspective. You heard from Audrey on some challenges and areas of opportunity generally, and even sometimes where perception becomes reality, which is not the intent. Um, Turning to you, what can leadership be doing more? What can we be doing more um, to pivot this conversation and make it go even faster?
Mamta, that's a question that's so close to my heart, right? Because I actually talk about this endlessly, not only with the organizations, but even in my friend circle in terms of what we can do to really talk about diversity in different angles. So Stephanie brilliantly put, right, and the initiatives that you have outlined, that's you are really leading from the front. And that's one of the first aspects that I'll kind of talk about. I'll talk about five that we can do from a leadership standpoint. One is really setting the tone from the top. It's, of course, leading from the front. You have to communicate your commitment as a leader, which others can really follow. And it should be part of our mission and vision as part of an organization, but as part of you, because the more authentic you are, that is how it kind of showcases to everybody else, right? So that's the first one. The second is really optically showing the diversity in all aspects, like truly walking your talk,
Hmm.
creating an inclusive culture, which is so important because a lot of organizations talk about D&I, but do we actually see it? Do we see it when we go for meetings? Do we see it when you ask for thoughts from everybody? Do you actually see it on the floor? And encouraging that aspect of diversity is so important. The third one, I think, is not just for leaders, but for everyone, men, women, different groups completely, is to speak up about any kind of microaggressive behavior. And that is so important because we see it in simple things. Like I was in a meeting and someone was like, "Why aren't you wearing a sari for this meeting? You're from India." And I'm like, why in the world would I wear a sari? That is one of the traditional wear that we have, but why would I wear it? I don't normally wear it. I never wore it in India either. So, these are small things that kind of tickle your
And if you
mind,
want to wear it, it shouldn't be a problem either. So it is up
right?
to you as an individual how
Exactly,
you feel comfortable.
right? And the second one was, these are simple things said, but when you sit down and think about it, I'm like, should I have minded when someone said, now you'll hear a male voice? I'm like, so what? Female voices don't count? What does that mean? So you have to like really speak up. So that's the third thing. The fourth one is, of course, promoting trainings, right? So a lot of these come down to unconscious biasnesses that all of us have. And we don't need to make a big deal about it, but we also need to extremely focus on specific biases that come naturally to a lot of us, from where we are. And the last one, I'll tell you, hold ourselves accountable. I don't say this enough. I've said this to our leadership so many times that hold yourselves accountable in terms of measurable aspects, both as inputs and outputs. Because we typically look at it as a percentage, but is that enough?
Mhm.
Right? Are we getting the right folks coming in? Are we measuring it from the time that we are actually encouraging, from the marketing that goes out to the leads that we get to everything? You've got to measure the input and output. So those are the five things that I would mention, Mamta, that we can do from a leadership standpoint with all organizations.
So well said. So I will give you an example, and I'd love to open it up to other anybody's experiences, but it just triggered it for me, Ruchi. Recently, I was in a boardroom, for lack of a better description, and this is one of my pet peeves was I say something and there's some nods, and then one of the gentlemen in the room said, "Let me explain what she means." Okay. I'm right here, but okay. So I let him explain what he thinks. I mean, I let him do that. I don't jump in. So it's a little bit of, you can have people because their intention is not that. Is what Audrey said. Sometimes the intention isn't to be hurtful, but how I heard it, and every woman in that room heard it, was exactly what I just said, right? You all responded to it that way. And he finished, and by the way, he was wrong in in his explanation and what I was saying. And the best part was another guy in the room goes, "That's not what Mantha said." And then I said, Hang on, guys, let me jump in and explain myself." So we
Yeah.
also have to hold ourselves accountable and also remind those that are unintentionally still boomeranging to something that they don't even know they're doing, and then help them and coach them. So after that, and I had this smile. So afterwards, after the meeting, I said, "Let me explain to you why I was smiling in that conversation." And he said to me, "Oh my goodness, that was not my intent." I said, I totally get it. But that is how you came across in that room to every other person, at least the women that were in there, that felt you were explaining me." And he reacted such a favorable way. He goes, "I'm so glad you told me that. I had no idea that that was happening." So, I want to open it up to any experiences you guys have that you want to share. We probably have another 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up after that.
Yeah, I have one that just happened yesterday,
Yeah.
right? So fresh
Yes.
out of the oven. So I'm in a meeting yesterday with three other individuals. Two of them are male, one of them is a female. Yesterday, as you all know, was Women International Day. So I take the opportunity to congratulate this woman that is on the call, which I think she's a rocker, super talented, doing a phenomenal job. So I say, this person, hey, you're doing an awesome job. So I congratulate her and her manager, who's one of the males on the phone call. I said, "Hey, will you agree?" Um, I was hoping he was also going to corroborate with everything that I had said. And he said, "Well, she's great within the small team, but with the brother team, other people will question it." And my face just started changing, like, what are you saying? And
Right.
then he sees my face, like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just had a bad day this morning." He starts telling me everything that happened in his morning. And I said, "All right, let's just stop this for a second and let's do this all over again." So I tell the lady, once again, congratulations. You're doing a phenomenal job within your immediate team and your broader team, right? And the manager's like, "Yes, Stephanie, you're absolutely right." I'm like, "Okay, let's make sure that that's how it goes." But again, it's such a simple example of how we can nurture, encourage, and equip the people of our team, because those simple words, sorry, could have made that person feel, am I not doing the right job? Maybe I should be
Right.
doing more. Why does my manager think that about me? So it's, how do we change those behavior? Into your point, Mamta, how do we make ourselves accountable? I could have stayed
Yes.
quiet and then just kept going with the meeting, but I'd make sure that I corrected in a very nice and subtle way the behavior of
Yeah.
that person.
I love it. I love it.
So,
Audrey?
I love that both of you all, my thing I love most about both of those is that both of you took the time to step aside and have that conversation afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I think that's another big step in correcting things like this. Because, like Mamta said, the word unintentional is important. There's unconscious bias, there's unintentional moments that people are hurt. And we have to get comfortable having those hard conversations because if you don't explain it, they're not going to understand it.
That's
And
right.
my example of this would be it's actually not even a work example. It's not even me, but we talked about, it starts at an early age. And I've actually, mentioned this before. Most of you all know I have a 10-year-old daughter. She's into very heavily competitive basketball. And we ended a season last season, and, she wanted to keep playing. The girls' team was done. So she actually started playing for the boys' team. The coach come and got her to finish the season with the boys' team. And after just a couple of weeks, she got a starting position. And it was a situation a couple of days later at school that, somebody had said something how she's starting. And one of the little boys said, it's probably because she's a girl and they feel bad for her. And I said, it is so sad to me that at 10 years old, you somewhere along the line have been taught that because
That's
that's not
unfortunate.
something that would come naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the line, you were taught that. But it did give me a chance to sit my daughter down and explain to her why those things are not okay, how you start to change that perception of yourself at a young age, and why you don't let those small comments like that stop you from where you want to go.
I couldn't agree with you more. I have a teenage girl who, Stephanie knows well. She's a go-getter, and I expect nothing less from her. And to your point, what one of the things that I cringe about, even, and I've heard it in the workplace, is, oh, we have this number of people in the meeting, and oh, but I want to make sure you know there's X% women here as well. I'm in the meeting because I belong in the meeting.
Hmm.
That's it, right? We are here because we belong and we're present. And in fact, there should be more. It goes to the 30% club that you alluded to, Stephanie, and some.
Hmm.
And so that's also some work in progress of where we've had this checkpoint for lack, we, the big we, of what percentage do we have? But it's really more than that, that it's about actually that back to the conversation of equity. It's really about having the equity in play and why people are present in that room. Because when we have that, the question of percentages goes out the door. We don't need it. It would be there.
Yep. And
Anything? Go
Absolutely.
ahead,
yeah,
Stephanie.
if I may add something, I think if I was to summarize a lot of the things that we've said is diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a one-time effort, and it is not a single effort. It's an ongoing exercise that can take a company from an okay company to a good company, from a good company to a great company. Because what makes that company is the people at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
Teleperformance has 400,000 employees and counting probably. We have 24,000 employees. So how do we give the right tools, the right training, the empowerment that the people have to thrive, to shine, and to be able to have equity and equality? Is it, it sounds simple, I guess, to all of us, but it's not that simple. So is how do we make sure that our companies are committed to doing all those different things?
You
So
Make them
well
mentioned
said,
accountable.
something.
Stephanie.
Yeah.
So well said, Stephanie. Ruchi, any lasting comments before I wrap up?
I love what Audrey and Stephanie mentioned. And Audrey, I was going to relate a very simple thought from my daughter very recently, right? She's 8. And I said she's sassy. So she got into a brawl, uh, believe it or not, at 8. And she got boxed in her stomach. And I was like, what happened? So she's like, I was going after this, boy. And I was like, why? He said girls should not exist. I was like, you should have just calmed down and said you wouldn't exist if girls didn't exist. It was as simple as that.
Exactly.
It kind of
Right.
boils down to that. However, I think it's just so important for all of us to understand how much diversity really matters. And it creates a business impact. There's no going back from it.
Yep.
Like Mamta mentioned, I think all of us belong here, but we also need to take a step back and say we do belong here, but we need more people who belong here, who have the same skill set, right? And we need to make an effort towards that, like all of you have kind of articulated. So,
Thank you so much. Sorry, I cut you
And
off. Go ahead,
no,
Ruchi.
and one more thing, Mamta, is it Mastercard cannot do it alone. TP cannot do it alone. So how do
Mhm.
we create partnerships between each other? Exactly what we're doing right now. So we can discuss this topic and create new programs and new solutions and new ideas together so we can all thrive and we can all shine and succeed.
I absolutely agree. And I think that's a call to action for everybody listening to us today. I want to thank everyone for being part of the Women's History Month podcast discussing equity and equality. I've had the privilege of having Stephanie, Rucci, and Audrey here. And some key snapshots of what I heard from the ladies was set the tone from the top. Knowledge is power. Champion and include and be part of the conversation. Walk the talk, create products that are inclusive and let people shine, let individuals shine and be empowered by that as well. And last but not least, embrace, include, and harness.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for listening to us, and we appreciate you. And see you next time.
Thank you for the
Thank
opportunity.
you, everyone.
Thank you so much.